Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. We are back with another look at the beasts roaming the woods of Appalachia. It would appear you guys enjoyed our last episode very much. Received a lot of fantastic feedback. Thank you. Thank you. That is always so appreciated. That 911 call, man, gets your blood going, doesn't it? And because time is just too divine and coincidental, oddly enough, the day prior, or 2 days prior to releasing that episode, that Carolina Case Files released another banger and interviewed the young man that made that call. This time, fully on camera, shared his face, his name. I believed his story before, but if it's worth anything, matching his voice with expressions on a face and emotions, it just sealed it further. So thank you to those guys over at Carolina Case Files for that and all of the incredible reporting that you guys have done since launching, which was not that long ago. And thank you to Tyler for being brave. I just want to add here, and I wish it didn't have to be said, having researched numerous crucial historical cases of the paranormal and seeing for myself just how unnecessarily cruel some folks can be to the witnesses of these events, I sincerely hope that Tyler and his family see the support that his story already has and are met with kindness and understanding. Whether people believe him or no, I just hope that they are kind. Now, to the reason that we have gathered here today. The reason for the season. The friggin' Wampus Cat, man. Ugh. I fear we may have reached the extent of what we can do as far as this mystery concerns us. We've come so far. I know, you guys. I know. I mentioned that I followed the last advice that I received from the good folks over at the Cherokee National Research Center out of Oklahoma to make contact with the Eastern Band in North Carolina in the off chance that this particular cryptid lore was not actually ancient Cherokee material, but still Cherokee in origin, albeit far more localized. I submitted my inquiry to the Museum of the Cherokee People, and I received a response with a link to some digital collections and also some contact info for the collections team. First things first, I pored over those collections. They've got a great search feature, so it made quick work of my initial efforts, but because I like to make things more difficult than they have to be, there was a lot of doubling back and trying out different spellings and such. So spend some time doing that. Nada, you guys. Nada for the Wampus Cat in these files, at any rate. So I shot off my inquiry to the collections team, and I have not received a reply as of this moment. Just to very quickly recap our Wampus Cat adventure that began January 31st, more resources than not attribute the Wampus Cat to the Cherokee. We connected with their National Research Center, and we spoke to a handful of folks on that end. Nothing but a local sports team bearing the title. We then connected with the Eastern Band, and we got a good look through their digital collections. No mention of the Wampus Cat or anything similar. In addition to this, there was a teensy little side quest that I went on. I received an email from a listener who suggested I reach out to a figure in the paranormal field who may have already talked on this matter, and they know all about it. Mystery solved, right? No, because nothing is that easy. But I did. I reached out, got a response. They had not ever talked about the Wampus Cat and all their doings, and they've done a lot, but they had recently talked about the Wampahoofus, so, that doesn't help our cause, but maybe that's where the listener figured that he had talked about the Wampus Cat. Very similar names. So possibly, thank you to that listener. It was a very, very good idea. Very good suggestion. Oh, man. Good people. We've laughed. We've cried. We've had cool interactions, made some friends along the way, hit some dead ends. After all this running around, after all is said and done, I may have found the answer to our mystery. And it's no thanks to any of my efforts. Next time I go off trail, I need one of you to just gently grab me by the shoulders and redirect me to get back on track. Okay? Deal? AppalachianHistorian.org published an entry on their website December 18th, 2025, 1 month before I jumped on this wild goose chase, where they detailed out the very likely trajectory of the Wampus Cat legend. It's a glorious read. It's fabulous. Really is. I am going to sum it up for you here, though, so that we can get to today's actual task at hand. But I do have it linked in the sources, so go read it and get the fleshed out education on this. Catawampus, or cattywampus, which more of you may have heard of. I've heard of that before. Essentially the same word, with different regional spellings and pronunciations. These were words that were already being used in the 1800s. They took on a few different meanings depending on the context. Catawampus could mean something was crooked, out of order, or something had just gone wrong. It could also refer to an undefined creature lurking in the dark, or used as an insult to describe a fierce, domineering woman. Super catawampus girl over here. The term had a lot of meanings, but, in so doing, it was commonly used. In some areas, this word would overlap with regional words that were being used to describe real predators, such as cougar or catamount, and it could be used interchangeably to refer to the real animal. When cougars began disappearing from the southern mountains, the word began to drift, no longer able to refer to the real animal, and it would take on a more mythical tone to reference screams from the woods, thumps in the dark, mysterious livestock deaths. Oh, that is just the catawampus. In all of that, the term would be shortened to wampus somewhere in the early 1900s. And then when references to it began appearing in print, the original parts of that word were put back together and swapped around, ultimately becoming Wampus Cat. Writers, folklorists, and lumberjacks across the country began adding to this creature's mythos. The descriptions of it varied across America. One version of it in the forests of Idaho, just down the road that way, had it walking on 2 legs. It had tufted ears, a lion's tail, and a pruning hook-like front arm. Yay. A few years later, an Ozark version crafted a more amphibious creature who could take easily to the water and swim like a mink. Elsewhere, the term expanded even further. It was safe from no one. Wampus Cat was utilized as a nickname for troublemakers, bucking horses, because why not? Random. And it began getting adopted by school sports teams as their mascot, like the Atoka High Wampus Cats. Go Cats. And this is where that description that some of you may have heard of that includes 6 legs is given some playtime. 4 to run, 2 to fight with. Simultaneous to its non-serious or cultural usages, whenever livestock and pets turned up dead, or it was thought that there was some mysterious predator in the area, well, that was serious, and it became this catch-all boogeyman explanation for whatever people couldn't identify in the dark. That was the Wampus Cat, and that was real, and that was to be feared, and was a reason for your kids to be home by dark. The story about a Cherokee woman turned into a cat spirit. That connection only began popping up in the late 20th to early 21st century. And that is the soft range of time that many researchers and folklorists considering the Cherokee connection to the Wampus Cat agree on, because there are no definite hard answers as to when and where it truly first appeared prior to showing up in print, but this is best estimate. 3 things that are broadly agreed upon. The Cherokee narrative appears in more recent times. Early references to Catawampus or Wampus Cat describe a vague monster or vague predator, but do not describe a cursed or shapeshifting woman. And Wampus Cat, as a term, has existed for dang near a century. Now, here is where I will zero in and finally close this chapter on the Wampus Cat Cherokee connection. The AppalachianHistorian.org write-up references an article written by Dave Tabler for AppalachianHistorian.net, who references a specific version of the Cherokee Wampus Cat legend that is one of the more familiar origin stories that includes a Cherokee woman turned cat spirit thing. And this is the story of Running Deer, whose husband was driven mad by Iwa, a forest demon, and she goes to avenge him with the aid of a magical cat mask. Surprises Iwa, who ends up destroying itself in a fit. She returns a hero, and the legend goes that she, Running Deer, is the Wampus Cat that is seen, spiritual protector of her people and the land to this day. Dave Tabler's notes for his article reference this version was relayed by a Tennessee user in 2003 on the Ex Libris Nocturnus forum. This particular posted version that Dave is referencing is the first ever, as far as I can find, it's the first ever printing, publishing of the story that we are all familiar with. It is not, however, the first time this story has been printed. That's confusing. I know. Let me explain. So this 2003 version is a really condensed, crunched down retelling of a much longer and more detailed version of the Running Deer account, originally put into print in 1992 by folklore author Charles Edwin Price in his book Demon in the Woods, Tall Tales and True from East Tennessee. Price specialized in stories from Eastern Tennessee. It is thought that he may have heard this story from a Cherokee storyteller local to the area. He doesn't say that in his book, so I'm not sure where that comes from. He only says that the Cherokee might have the answer to the origin of the Wampus Cat. Here is their story. That's all he says. We've already confirmed it's not in any main Cherokee archives as part of their folklore, though. So we might assume that it arose as a local story only, or was cobbled together at the local level. And by cobbled together, I mean this wider idea of an unknown, screaming, thumping, thrashing predator in the dark that people called the Wampus Cat was adopted in Tennessee as well as across Appalachia and the nation, then married to certain misunderstood Cherokee influences such as their shape-shifting lore, their rituals, and booger masks, which could be used against malevolent forces and outside intrusion during specific ceremonies. And then a folklore author, having heard bits and pieces of this local lore, refined, perfected, and put it into print. And that crafted version cemented the story, becoming living legend. I don't think that Price made this story up. I don't. I think he utilized the information that he had at his disposal, partial and fragmented pieces that already existed in Eastern Tennessee, and then did his best to synthesize and complete the tale into a polished narrative package in order to give historical credence to actual reported sightings of the Wampus Cat, which he also relays in his book. Until I learn otherwise, that's the conclusion that I'm at. And, that's it, really. That's all I was after, the origin of the Cherokee connection. The end. You guys. The Wampus Cat. This has been the longest running game of telephone in the history of cryptozoology, a social, collaborative art installation. Its evolution dependent on whoever had the ball in their possession at that time. I wonder what fascinating new features it will adopt next. We may already know the answer to that based on a separate creature that we will talk about later in today's show. Now, we cannot even begin a discussion about the most monstrous and hairiest of Appalachian cryptids without talking about the big cheese and good personal friend of mine, Bigfoot. During our Sasquatch season, I covered some of the following in depth. There's going to be some new info for you, but first, we are going to revisit an old favorite of mine. Really excited that this one is making a reappearance on the show, not only because it adds to my ever-growing North Carolina, you good list, but I have made more references to a git stick in my regular life than is normal or healthy. We are, of course, talking about Knobby, the first published encounter with a creature known as Knobby took place in the winter of 1978 near Toluca, North Carolina in Cleveland County. Between late 78 and spring of 79, there was a rash of sightings, some estimates landing between 12 to 16 separate reports from locals in the area. And then Knobby would seemingly vanish, only to re-enter the chat nearly 30 years later. Now, on the surface, that kind of timeline doesn't scream credibility. It's spotty, it's inconsistent. But let's quickly revisit something I've talked about before. This idea that these creatures may have larger migratory territories. We talked about this regarding that wild Texas flap in the 70s, where sightings were occurring between multiple counties in an encapsulated span of time, suggesting movement, not randomness. And in Knobby's case, locals had reportedly been seeing something that they called a bape, or bear ape, since the early 60s. On top of that, surrounding counties have continued reporting sightings of a massive, upright walking, hairy, screaming creature in the decades since. So, if these things do roam, that timeline starts to make a little more sense. And even Dr. Russell Jones, in his book, The Appalachian Bigfoot, he makes the argument that migration would likely be necessary purely from a survival standpoint. Food sources shift. Resources run dry, so the creature moves on, stays a few months, moves again. Rinse and repeat. That all tracks. Back to the 78 sighting. 88-year-old local Ms. Minnie Cook claimed to see a 6-foot-tall, bipedal, hairy creature near her home. Unnerved, she took to carrying around a gun every time she stepped outside. She was not alone in her experience. People had already been seeing the creature, hearing its eerie cry described as a wailing woman in pain. Others would say a yodeling followed its screams, and that is a detail that is commonly seen across many Bigfoot audio events. The creature, eventually dubbed Knobby due to sightings of it taking place in proximity to Carpenter's Knob, was described as a 200-pound, 6-foot-tall, hairy animal with a small head and a flat face. Depending on the sighting, sometimes it walked on four legs, sometimes two, like a man. Bigfoot researcher Jim Hollingsworth spent time interviewing those who had claimed to encounter Knobby, comparing its described sounds to those previously described in other known Sasquatch audio captures across the country. For a brief moment, Knobby fever would take over the area. In addition to witness stories, he'd even make appearances in stories which may or may not have had anything to do with him. He was just that popular. A well-known part of Knobby's lore is the alleged killing of a local's goat, Bill, whose neck was reportedly broken. But nobody saw a creature in that account. Not only Mr. Hollingsworth was on the case, but other investigators uncovered a possible den and small strange tracks about the size of a man's hand with a thumb-like protrusion, very ape-like. And then, just like that, by January of 79, the hubbub died down. People moved on to bigger and better things because Knobby seemingly disappeared. But did he? As I mentioned, sightings didn't really stop if they just shifted to neighboring areas. In the decades since, could nearby counties' reports of a large, hairy, bipedal creature have been our boy Knobby? Maybe, maybe not. It would help explain his decades-long absence from the original area. But then, according to the Lincoln Times News, suddenly there was a reappearance. Between 2007 and 2008, the paper notes, there were more than 16 eyewitness reports within a span of just 10 months. Knobby was back. He wouldn't truly make front-page news again, though, until 2010, when a Kasser resident named Tim Peeler says he encountered the creature, not once, but twice in the same night. Since you all seem to enjoy the North Carolina Pale Crawler 911 calls so much, let's keep the tradition alive. Here are the original calls Mr. Peeler made to dispatch.
Cleveland County 911.
Yeah. I don't know if I should have called this in or not, but
What's going on?
well, I've got 5 dogs singing barrels in my backyard.
Okay.
I've heard before this thing screams. He come down within camera. If I have a camera, I took a picture of it.
Took a picture of who?
I don't know what it was. He's walking upright like a man. And I would not kill it because I was afraid to. But he went back up the mountain.
Okay. I'll get off to right out there and see if they can locate anything, okay?
Well, I just wanted to report it. It don't matter if you send anybody up here or not. It's over with now. I did not shoot
Okay.
the thing. I did not shoot it.
Okay.
You can't blame it on me. I did not shoot it.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll just get an officer right through there and make sure everything's okay, all right?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Cleveland County 911.
Hello.
Can I help you?
Yes. This is Tim Peeler.
Uh-huh. What's going on now?
This beast is paying my dogs I've got 5 dogs. Bear dogs and hog dogs. And I shined a light on this thing, but I would not see it.
Okay, what did it look like?
It looked like a giant ape with a man's face. But I was afraid to kill it, and it made a whistling sound. I just wanted y'all to know I have not shot one or killed one.
Okay, was there more than one or just the one?
Just the one.
Okay.
He was about 9-10 foot tall, with real long arms. And I've had experiences with him before in the deer stand. But this one, somehow, I go out there, he gets gone. Then I come back in the house, and he gets back there again, and my dogs is just raising heck. So I go back out there with my gun and my spotlight, and he goes back into the woods. Then I'll bring my gun or spotlight in. In about 10 more minutes, he does the same thing again.
So it came through more than one.
No, it's one. One big one. Would I get in any trouble if I shot and killed this beast, this animal, or whatever it is?
I can't answer that question.
But I was just trying to keep y'all informed to extract some information.
Okay.
I'm a bear hunter and a hog hunter. I got bear dogs, hog dogs. This thing, some reason, tonight is coming down, messing with my dogs. If he comes too close, I'm gonna give him all the chance I'll give him. If he comes too close to me, I'm gonna kill him.
Okay, I can't answer that or not.
I don't mind him. I don't mind him on the mountain. I know what's on the mountain. I don't mind him on the mountain, but so he's coming down here messing with me. And my dogs. He can kill one of my dogs because all I have was spice and a mountain cur. But I don't know, hold up the channel too long. But I'm loaded before him. Where's the first half on the right? And I don't really, truly want to kill this creature because they don't usually mean any harm. They never use any harm. But I thought I'd call you and tell you, in case I have to make that shot.
Okay.
I'll call and ask you back what to do.
All right. Well, I'll let y'all know. Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
It was about 3 a.m. Tim was standing outside his home. The gospel channel played in the background on the TV inside. He suddenly hears coyotes making a ruckus, not too far away, fighting with something. So he grabs his predator collar to see if he can lure one of them into his yard. Blows the collar, and a predator does appear. But it's no coyote. In a clearing not 20, 30 feet from his porch, a very large, humanoid, hairy creature appears, and then proceeds to make its way over to Tim's dogs in some kennels nearby. Some of them were in heat, which Tim believed may have attracted said Bigfoot, and may also have been a reason that they would be in danger. Repeated throughout his calls, repeated in the story that he has told since the event, he was afraid this creature was going to kill one of his dogs. Walking stick in hand, Tim made his way directly toward this thing, points it at the creature, and says, Get away from here. And it works. The creature turns and heads into the woods surrounding the property. Tim goes back inside his house. But minutes later, his dogs start raising hell outside. He goes back out, and it's back. Same spot, same creature. One of his dogs had worked itself into a tizzy and had gotten its chain wrapped around the creature's leg. It bent down and untangled itself as Tim came up on him again, stick in hand. And this time he got really close. Pointing the stick, he jabs at this thing's navel, and he again says, Get away. When Tim reenacts this moment during an interview, he's poking his stick at the level of his own head, which I thought was an interesting, maybe unconscious detail that concerns the creature's size. Once again, it leaves. Same path as before. Following this encounter, Tim would describe the creature in detail. Covered in roughly 2-inch long hair that was thinner on its arms and belly, so you could see skin, which he says was light, similar to his own. It had thicker, longer hair on the head, almost like a mane, which Tim would say was beautiful. He really got dragged for that comment. It had a beard that extended down to its groin. Tim easily assessed that it was a male. Its hair was lighter, with a yellowish tint, like aged or dirty white or gray fur. The yellowing is a really strange detail, which Tim repeats a few times. It had brown eyes, a human-like nose, and bushy eyebrows. An odd characteristic was that it appeared to have 6 fingers on each hand. He described its fingernails as long and its odor that of a skunk. Initially, he had estimated it to be between 9 and 10 feet tall, but later he confirmed the higher end of 10 feet after measuring a branch overhanging the path that it had taken when it exited his yard after it brushed its head against it on the way out. Tim suspected that it might have come back again if not for the arrival of a police cruiser. Let's address the obvious. It is easy to listen to those calls and think, yeah, this guy's definitely drunk. And maybe he was. Maybe. He does sound a little slurry, especially in the second call. But also, it's between 3 and 4 in the morning. I don't know about you guys, but I start getting a little sleep slurry come 9 p.m. I may be old. So just to introduce a little bit of doubt, do you think the guy could have just been tired? But even if he had been drinking, that detail alone doesn't automatically disqualify his story for me. Some of the details that he includes, not after the fact, but during the calls themselves, leans toward situational processing and recall of something that happened rather than complete invention. Oddly specific details, some of which he repeats and emphasizes. He says, I don't want to kill this creature. they don't usually mean any harm. And I don't mind him on the mountain. I know what's on the mountain. This is interesting. He mentions in one of his interviews that though he had never seen the creature before this, he had heard it before. So he's alluding to a previous ongoing presence and his awareness of that. He asks dispatch if he would get in trouble for killing what he was seeing. Even if inebriated, he still had enough critical thinking capacity to consider repercussions. A valid consideration to make if you were truly afraid that something was going to come back and kill your dogs, right? He mentions in the call that he's a bear and a hog hunter. That's what his dogs are utilized for. In interviews following that night, we can see both bear and hog pelts nailed up on his wall. He's an experienced hunter. He's not someone who's unfamiliar with wildlife. So if anyone believes that he perhaps drunkenly mistook a bear for a Bigfoot that night, I'm not sure that's conceivable. Could he really have mistaken even a big bear, the biggest of bears, for what he would repeatedly describe as a 10-foot tall, hair-covered, 6-fingered, humanoid creature with a human nose and yellowed hair? One final detail that lends to credibility of Tim's story. He stopped telling people about it. Stopped talking to reporters. Not because his story fell apart. Not because he kept getting caught up in inconsistencies. But because he was tired of the ridicule. The media frenzy had died down, and Tim was done within a matter of weeks. It's pretty quick. That doesn't really scream attention-seeking or money-grab behavior to me. And actually, on that note, local businesses would make a hell of a good amount of money on Knobby memorabilia. Tim wouldn't make a dime on his story. Now, about 2 months following this sighting, a reporter with Charlotte Magazine had attempted to make contact with him in person. And while Tim and his family didn't want to talk about it, the reporter would get him on the phone a couple of days later. And he said, "I don't feel good about this at all." And he's speaking here of the media's handling of his story. "I don't deserve coverage like that. It was just a thing that happened to me. I was in fear for my life and my dog's life." One of my favorite modern day accounts right there, dudes. Think what you want about it, but it intrigues me. I still would really, really like to have a get stick. If I make it to Appalachia before this season is over, I'm telling you, I'm going to get me one. I'm going to do it. Every Appalachian state has a Bigfoot story to tell. Two of the bigger ones that we have covered are the Minerva monster out of Ohio and the Flintville monster out of Tennessee. Originally, I guess you could say that both of these creatures were kind of villainous in my coverage of them. Based on further research, I may have been too quick to judge the Minerva monster. Not that he's, a sweetheart or innocent or anything. I mean, he reportedly killed a dog. No bueno. But others' coverage of the creature has me considering that there may have been a little more rhyme to his reason. Jury's still out, I guess. The Flintville monster, still a prick and a half. Yeah, chasing terrified people, tearing up cars, trying to kill toddlers? Nah, brother, nah. No soup for you. Some of the more creative names given to Sasquatch come from Appalachia. Alabama's got the Downy Booger out of Winston County. Norton, Virginia, of course, has their Norton Wood Booger. We talked about that. A wood devil resides in Coos County, New Hampshire, and West Virginia, who seems to be right up there with North Carolina within the realm of the highly strange and supernatural, laying claim to such iconic and reality-bending phenomena as Mothman, Flatwoods Monster, Grafton Monster, Pepperoni Rolls, as the infamous Yahoo, a name indicative of the sound that it makes. West Virginia's got too many cryptids to keep track of, you guys. They had to simplify the naming process. Pennsylvania has an exceptionally storied and long history with Bigfoot-type creatures, from wild men and apple stealers in the 1800s to orb-juggling UFO ride-hitching reports in the 20th and 21st century. PA has no shortage of unusual stories to tell. Final Appalachian Bigfoot that we will discuss before we move on took place in 2015 in Bedford County, Virginia. And this one, it's not an extremely well-known sighting, but it got my attention because there was a 911 call involved with this one too. Despite my best efforts, I could not get my hands on this call audio. The original audio has long since been purged from the county's dispatch archives. However, I placed a FOIA request, dudes. My first that was with Bedford County's emergency communications, and I was able to get some supporting documentation for the call. It really happened. So we're going to go with that. All right. I know this is going to sound crazy. The call begins. But I went back and checked, and there were prints. A Bigfoot with a baby. Dispatch. There were what? Caller. It was a Bigfoot with a baby. Close to midnight on September 9th, 2015, a woman was driving up Route 43 toward the peaks of Otter. Between Turkey Mountain Road and the bridge, her headlights lit up a peculiar sight. A Bigfoot carrying a baby Bigfoot. The caller, who had requested to remain anonymous, would wait 2 days before placing her call to 911. And according to the call sheets, it was a little after 6 p.m. on September 11th when she made her call describing what had happened. The Bigfoot was heading from the road into the woods with its baby. It took longer strides, was taller than a deer, about 6 feet tall. The baby looked right at her. And after having revisited the area in the daylight, she would also include that there were footprints. The next day, she followed up to ask about her report from the day previous, reiterating that there were footprints. She'd circled one and measured it using her own foot, saying it was twice as big as her size 8. She was advised that there wasn't a report because she had not requested to speak with anyone. She confirmed she still did not want to do that. ABC 13 News would contact the witness by phone on September 17th, and they would get a few additional details of the event, just left out of this documentation or abbreviated. And she would tell them that she had only recently moved to the area and did not want to get a reputation with her new neighbors, hence the anonymity. That is understandable. During her conversation with dispatch, she assured them that she had not been drinking and gave no explanation as to why she had waited the 2 days to call them, but that she had gone back in the daylight. And in the call, she clarifies that the footprint was bigger than her 2 feet end to end. So just clarification from the actual call that she's talking about length. That's a big old footsie. She says the creature was holding the baby the way a human would, and that it looked right at her. And she would tell the ABC 13 reporter that the baby looked like Chewbacca. That's a fun one. You know what else is out there in them Appalachian woods? Werewolves. About an hour south of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a man and his soon-to-be fiancée were hiking together toward a particular peak on the mountain where the man intended to propose. It was a late spring afternoon in 1980. As they continued up the trail, they suddenly heard familiar sounds of an animal approaching them from within the surrounding underbrush. It sounded big, likely a bear, they thought, as they waited for it to reveal itself. But what would step onto the trail 20 to 30 feet ahead of them was unlike any creature they had ever seen before. It did walk on all fours. Its fur was black, like the bears in the area, but it was much, much bigger, had a long, bushy tail, had a pointed snout like that of a canine, like that of a wolf. This thing also stunk to high heaven. The couple didn't make a sound as the man inched his partner to stand behind him. The creature, now in full view, suddenly stood up on its hind legs and turned directly toward them, fully aware of them, and now silently staring back. At full height, it stood 7 feet tall. The man described the eyes as small, but shining a neon red. Certain of their impending demise, I can only imagine their relief when this creature suddenly turned and quite easily and naturally on its 2 hind legs walked off the trail, disappearing back into the trees. I found that story on the West Virginia Ghosts website. The anonymous storyteller wraps up by saying that the man, who was his brother, had ended up telling their father, who had grown up in the area. The father wasn't surprised at all, because he too had had experiences with it when he was a child, saying it would come around his family's home, walk around the house at night, and you could actually see it through the windows, which were higher up off the ground because it was just that tall. After the creature's visits, the family would often awake the next morning and discover one of their livestock had been killed. And the father, too, mentioned a nasty odor that accompanied the creature. That thing be stankin'. I think that's a direct quote from the story, actually. That thing be stankin'. Rosemary Ellen Guiley shared another, more recent story of some mysterious wolfy cryptid out in the wilds of the Mountain State. This one takes place just an hour south of Flatwoods. 2 teenage cousins had been about 5 miles deep in the remote wilderness of Webster County at a deer camp along with their fathers. It began to rain heavily as dusk set in, and the family members were getting ready to cook dinner when they realized they'd forgotten lard to cook with. The boys volunteered to take one of the ATVs back into civilization to pick some up along with other items that the group had forgotten. The boys suited up in their rain gear, hopped on one of the ATVs, and took off. It wasn't too long into their trip when the nasty weather started to clear up. Clouds parted, the moon lit up their surroundings very nicely. They stopped to take a quick break to remove their raincoats and check their gas level. The storyteller says that he had just taken a drink of his Mountain Dew, and he turned to ask his cousin if he wanted some when he saw what he described as a huge wolf standing on its hind legs on the pathway behind them. He says he could see a silhouette of something standing 6.5 feet tall. He could tell it was covered in hair, had a long snout, and long, pointy ears. The first word to pop into his mind was werewolf. He musters out the word, "Look," and his cousin turns and sees it. And then they both quickly jump back up on the ATV and haul butt out of there. But they're fighting the muddy slop left behind by the rain. The cousin, in his fear, is killing the engine, forgetting to shift. These boys were afraid. I bet that was one long-ass getaway. That's like when you're running from, the murderer in your nightmare, and they're moving perfectly fine, and you're jello. The storyteller says that in this moment, yeah, as they're trying to drive away, he wouldn't look behind them. He was too scared that he would look and see that the creature was chasing them. I found one more just odd, maybe werewolf story from West Virginia, and I do mean it's odd, but you know what, West Virginia, y'all be infested with cryptids over there. So what's one more? This one comes from A Guide to Haunted West Virginia by Walter Govinda and Michael Shoemaker. On a cold winter night, a woman and her husband were driving along County Route 151 outside of Norton, about an hour south of Grafton. Telling ya, West Virginia, y'all got a problem. It was fairly late, and again, fairly cold, so they were surprised to come up behind a man just walking on the side of the road. As they went to pass by him, he turned his head to look directly at them, and according to the woman, he had the face of a dog. Mid-transition, perhaps? Hopefully this wasn't just the woman's way of calling this guy super ugly. All right, let's move east into Virginia. Now, many of the stories that I found for Virginia are very urban legend, local lore flavored, and many are said to have taken place close to a century ago. But just to cover our bases, here are some of the werewolf examples in the state. Near and around Henrico County's Confederate Hills Recreation Center, now the Springs Rec Center, reportedly is a 6 to 7 foot tall creature with a humanoid body and the head and features of a wolf. Covered in gray-silver fur, this cryptid is hard to miss and is often witnessed darting in front of cars or standing off to the side of the road, just watching. It's claimed this creature has never harmed anyone, but has given chase from time to time. Further south, near Richmond, is a centuries-old legend of a canid beast who calls the Great Dismal Swamp and surrounding area home. Said to be 8 feet tall, covered in white fur. Its face seems almost too human if it weren't for the snarling, extended muzzle and its glowing yellow eyes. The earliest reported encounter with it took place in 1902 when L. Frank Ames claimed he'd come face to face with the creature outside his home. When he fired off his gun, the creature, seemingly unbothered, turned and disappeared into the night. Another local who had been living on the edge of the swamp was only 8 years old when he recalls seeing it. Lying in bed, he looked to his window and saw a beastly, humanish, wolfish face peering back at him with yellow eyes, spittle running down its face. The boy could see cream, red, and brown matted fur. Though its eyes were yellow, they appeared to be human. Terrified, the boy would escape to sleep with his mother. The following morning, upon inspecting the exterior of the house, all of the windows had dirt that was stirred up and grass yanked out beneath them. Scratch marks in the wood and missing paint was found directly beneath his bedroom window. All right, let's switch up our taxonomy again and get to our final hairy and monstrous cryptid. This is going to go pretty quick. It's weird, but bear with me. In early February of 2024, TikTok creator Jasmine, whose channel is @NightmareXJazz, posted a video asking her viewers for their thoughts about something she had just seen. A cat man. To preface her story, Jasmine is a practicing witch and pagan who lives near the Appalachian Mountains. She had lived in her house for just a couple of years when this event occurred, and says that in that time, a lot of other strange stuff had taken place on this property, but nothing quite like this. While she was new to her house, she would note that the land itself was of course, old, but more importantly, it was just kind of weird, kind of creepy. And at the time of this account, she says that she was already familiar with a lot of the major cryptids out there, but before this, she'd never even heard of a catman before. Didn't know it was a thing. When she first saw it, it was after dark, and she was letting her dog out her back door to go potty. The dog froze, would not go outside. It stood at her side, whimpering, tail up, hackles raised, staring. She peers outside, and across the yard, at the very edge, she spots someone, or something unexpected, standing there, looking back. What appeared to be a human-like creature with a cat's head and face. The head was very large and covered in fur. And she remembers maybe seeing like some fur on the chest. Otherwise, she noted what looked like grayish skin. She said it wore no clothes. It stood 6 feet tall. Its eyes reflected the light. On this first visit, a few things would happen. Being a witch, she said her entire property was absolutely covered in protective wards. After she saw the creature, one of her wards would fall on its own and break. And as the activity progressed over the following week, she would mention that none of her wards seemed to be working with this thing. After seeing the creature, she would close her door and retreat deeper into her home, but would hear scratching at her back door and also what sounded like whispering coming from outside. 2 days later, it would return. She did not see it, but she could again hear scratching at her back door and whispering. The whispering was unintelligible, but like it was speaking words that just weren't in English. The next night, it was back for a third time. This night, she would actually spot it again. She would also hear it walking on her back deck and something like a low grumbling or growling sound. Earlier that day, her dog was Velcro dog for most of the day and would spend an unusual length of time staring out the back door into the woods. And that was during daylight. So maybe this thing was just chilling out there in her woods the entire time. By this point, people's opinions and ideas had started rolling in. Some immediately thought Wampus Cat because, Appalachia, duh. She would research that and decide what she had seen was definitely not that. Didn't even look close. Others suggested flesh pedestrian. And at first, she would think that definitely wasn't it either, but as time went on, she became more open to that possibility. Some people also proposed the Lyran alien cat theory, and she was pretty clear that she thought that couldn't be it because starseed talk and lion aliens was total BS. The creature comes a fourth time. At this point, her dog just outright refused to go out the back door to potty. Maybe it had to do with her updating everyone that her backyard was starting to reek of cat urine. She had taken to letting him out the front door only. During this visit, she again could hear scratching at her window and back door. And she does share a recording that she had captured on the previous night. It's not incredibly audible. There's a lot of white noise, but yeah, in it, you sure can hear scratching noises in the background. By its fifth visit, the creature had begun regularly urinating right on her back porch. When it came on the 6th night, Jasmine was in the middle of a live stream. She ended up clipping out portions of the audio from that, and on the replay, you can hear someone walking around. There's some thumps, and then there's a few other strange sounds that I just couldn't place. She says that she had started receiving stories at this point of people's experiences with cat people. And interestingly, a handful of them came in from her area. So potentially other locals had been seeing the same thing. By its 7th visit, this is when she started changing her tune, saying she thought it very well could be some kind of flesh pedestrian. 2 weeks following this, she would get on and update everyone that the cat man had not returned, and even if he should ever return, she would not be saying anything more about it, referencing ridicule, name-calling, and threats from people on social media. Now, while Jasmine's story is very fascinating, her posts uncovered something that really intrigues me. You are going to be hard-pressed to find many solid references, let alone stories, of folks' experiences with a humanoid cat cryptid. Most people have never even heard of such a thing. Easy to assume it's just not a thing, right? But comments under any of these videos of hers tells a different story. Comment after comment along the lines of, I live in the Appalachian Mountains too, and I have seen it. I was 5 years old and used to wake up to a cat man in my room. No one ever believed me. I've never really talked about my experience, but I've seen something similar, so on and so forth. Documented stories of this are few and far between. Doesn't seem that people are openly talking, especially in this modern era. It's hard to come by these kinds of stories online. You can find them. They are out there and have taken place across the world, across the country, but the amount of stories doesn't quite reflect a prevalence that the people in Jasmine's comments seems to be indicating, especially for Appalachia. Just to include one more here at the end, for an example, for funsies, from Phantoms and Monsters, I found this one that, fits the description. This took place in Northern Virginia, technically Appalachia adjacent. A group of Boy Scouts were camping in an area east of Washington, D.C. Middle of the night, utilizing the buddy system, 2 boys accompanied each other to a restroom about 1/8 of a mile from their cabin and were on their way back. Out there in the dark wilderness, suddenly they feel like something's just not right, not good. They turn to look behind them and see what looks like a 6-foot-tall cat person hunched over. They begin to sprint through the dark and could hear it howling. They make it back safely, barricade the door, close as many blinds as they can, and wait. Then they see eyes through one of the uncovered windows. Then they hear something walking around. Then they hear the door rattling. And then it seemingly left. And the storyteller says that that one took place after 2012. I believe that these stories are out there. Cat cryptids in general are fairly prevalent in cryptozoology, whether that be the Wampus Cat or creatures from native legend, Appalachian black panthers, fearsome critters. There's lots. But 9 times out of 10, these are very much so cat-based creatures. And I became absolutely enthralled with this concept of a human-based cat cryptid after listening to Shell Dion on Paranormal Portal. The host had her on in 2020 to talk about the cat people, and she told just a rad story about an encounter that her daughter had had. And Shell, from what I understand, investigates and studies these kinds of cases revolving around cat humanoid creatures, but also, all kinds of other cryptids. And she receives witness stories about them. It's just fabulous. I hope she goes super public with that information, because I'm going to be first in line to listen. But until that happens, I'm just over here in suspense. I suspect there's more sightings of something like this than we know right now. But maybe nobody wants to be the one to kick it off. Nobody wants to go public saying, I saw a cat man. It sounds ridiculous. You saw the response the TikToker got, who did just that. Threats? Really? Never going to speak about it again, true or not. But is this idea of a cat man really any more ridiculous than a dog man, frog man, Mothman, Bigfoot, you name it? I don't think so. I think people's ailurophobia is showing. There's a word for you. I have heard some scant details here and there about encounters people thought that they had had with the Wampus Cat, where the creature in question stood up. Seemed to be part human. Charles Edwin Price's book, Demon in the Woods, he tells such a story. In East Tennessee in the 50s, a man watched a big cat meandering down the main street of his town, and it suddenly goes up on its hind legs, pressing its paw against a window, just staring inside. But then the cat turns and just continues walking down the street bipedally until it disappears around a corner. Could these humanoid cat cryptids be just another facet of the Wampus Cat? A new feature in its ever-growing evolution? Could there be a connection here? And does that make the Wampus Cat real? Cherokee connection or no? Oh, Lord. Is this our tulpa? Did we create it? Believe it into being? I don't know. This one has gone longer than I anticipated, so I'm just being silly here at the end. But to be serious for just one moment longer, I sincerely want to put it out there. If you have seen a cat person, it doesn't matter if you suspect it was a cat alien, like one of those Lyrans, or you think it was a shapeshifter of some kind, flesh pedestrian, even if it was just a realistic dream that was just too real, you have a safe place to share your story right here. Send it to paranormgirlpod@gmail.com. We can make it anonymous if you want. That is absolutely something we can do. We just want to hear your story. And hey, Jasmine, or any friends of Jasmine, if you hear this, here's my 2 cents I'll throw in there as far as consideration of what you saw. So there is something that is in Haitian voodoo called the loup-garou. The name is derived from loup-garou, which is a French term for werewolf. Loup-garou, however, referred to a person who, via voodoo ritual, could turn into other kinds of animals, such as cats. And voodoo's descendant is hoodoo, which has a presence in southern Appalachia. Could be a connection in there somewhere if you are already well-versed and practiced in the witchy world. Just a thought. If you enjoy this show, a couple of easy and free ways to support are by following on social @ParanormGirlPod on any social platform that you prefer. You can also leave a rating and review anywhere you heard this. I'm also on YouTube @ParanormGirlPod, where you can watch my talking head on many of these fine episodes. I've now got video versions uploading to Spotify as well, because your girl's fancy. So you can totally pretend like you're a giant while you watch this on your phone. Sometimes it is going to just be audio behind a picture because, things happen. Life happens. But I do my best to produce actual videos. Do. I will be live with Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen on April 9th. Call in with your worst nightmares or that dream that turned out to be a premonition. You can also submit your story early to be read by the host. Visit ghost.beer and click the Submit Your Story button. Heads up, Paranorm Girl Pod is going to be taking a mid-season break here shortly, think we are going to be able to do one more episode before we go dark. Breaks are a great opportunity to catch up on any episodes that you missed or check out any of our other season topics. Might I recommend Season 2's Mandela Effects? Or perhaps I can interest you in some Season 5's UFOs and Aliens. Even if you don't think those are your jams, I promise you, I didn't either. And then I was hooked by the end. Thank you guys for tuning in. I shall see you all for more next time. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.